I've done feature films, I've not seen anything on this massive scale, you know, which is vast.
It's just an epic.
It is huge.
It's never been done before in television on this scale. It's a character-driven story, but within a genre which is rarely seen on television.
It's an epic fantasy. At the core of it, there's a conflict for power.
It's rich in a way I've never seen fantasy be rich before.
It's got a brilliant combination of the fantastical and the real.
It's very much based in character, and then slowly, as the season progresses, we get to see more and more of this magical world.
It's got action, it's got adventure and love and passion.
Betrayal and greed and murder and sex.
Every character has such a full story. It's pretty intense.
There's real emotion and there's real relationships that you can understand and relate to, and there's so many twists and turns.
The fantasy fans will love it, but the HBO audience, those people are going to love it too.
People are going to fall in love with these characters and become afraid for them, and they should be afraid for them.
Nobody's safe.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground.
I began this series in 1991, and the minute the book started to hit the bestseller list, one starts getting inquiries from producers who are interested in optioning it for a feature film. And I remember talking to my agents and saying, it can't be done. There's too much. The books are too big. They would have to cut so much there would be nothing left.
This is a story that's so rich, and there's so many characters, and it is so many different viewpoints and narratives all woven together with incredible expertise. And it was such an intricate tapestry that he was weaving that we couldn't imagine mutilating it to make it into a feature script.
So the only way to do this is as a series of series on HBO. That's where my series belongs. So I told my agents, go forth and make it happen.
About 3.5 years ago, George Martin's agent sent me 4 books, and I started reading, and about 70 pages in, I got completely hooked. And a few hundred pages later, I called Dan. I said, tell me if I'm completely crazy, but I'm in the middle of this book called Game of Thrones, and I think it's the best read I've had in God knows how long.
The next day I said you weren't crazy, and 2.5 days later I was done with a 900-page book.
You're always a little bit afraid when you sell a work of yours to be adapted to television and film, because, of course, the history of Hollywood is full of cases where they just keep the title and change everything.
George Martin is the creator of this world, and in a very real sense, we're all walking in his dream right now.
I think we were cleaving really close to the source material because to be honest, we really, really respect and love the source material.
My fans are going to be very happy because they're going to see the story that I told come alive in a different medium, played by some fantastic actors. Our cast is just astonishing.
We felt that not only in terms of the principal casting, but the background casting, you should get a sense of these are the people, the type of people that live in each of these worlds.
I think finding the tone is the real challenge in casting all of them, because the material is so epic.
It's an ensemble piece. You're so dependent on having good actors to work with, and you know, very blessed in this show. I'm most amazed with the kids. The kids are so good.
I think the biggest challenge on season 1 was finding the kids. It took a long time.
The kids are so central. They're going to be the heart and soul of it as it continues.
Their stories become more and more important, and it gives us a great deal of confidence to know that we can give them the ball and they'll run with it because they're so good.
When I first got the audition for Game of Thrones, my mum heard about the books and she started reading them, and she soon found out that they were quite adult and that maybe I shouldn't read them. She would just tell me what goes on. And then coming to the sets, and it was just like how Mum explained it.
It's unbelievable, really, because when you read a scene in a book, you kind of start to imagine what's going to be like. And then you get on set, and it's better.
The palette is varied and fascinating. You've got the northernmost kingdoms being covered with snow and all this harsh landscape. You've got sort of the middle kingdoms, which are lush, and then you've got southern, sort of dry, arid, deserty sort of places.
We had researched probably 14 different countries before we settled on Northern Ireland, and Malta
The decision to shoot in Northern Ireland was predicated on being able to find a wide variety of locations very close to Belfast.
And there are mountains, and there are fertile green fields, and there are beautiful old-growth forests, and there's just such a range of environments.
The great thing about Belfast is you've got the paint hall we've been filming, which is just the biggest set you've ever seen. And then they find these incredible locations.
Certain areas just lend themselves, they just look so spectacular that you know that if you could get the story into them, that would reflect amazing Irish landscape.
All these years, and I still feel like an outsider when I come here.
You're not an outsider. When I got into this job, there was a call for a spectacular tree. And I had a folder of sexy trees, and that was one of them. And we also had to build a little pond just in front of it, which got excavated and reinforced.
The art department is so amazing with what they've created. Winterfell's such a huge castle, and it's so fantastically detailed. The butchers that are there and the armourer, it helps you so much as an actor to really just believe in where you are and what you're doing.
The first scenes that we shot were all shot in an authentic medieval castle. I would think as an actor standing in a place where actual noblemen were standing 700 years ago must be fairly inspiring.
You feel like you're part of a world here that's real and living and breathing.
For some of the bigger moments, the King's arrival, the main title, all those call for bigger instrumentation.
This is the first time we meet King Robert. It's the first time the king has been to Winterfell. The first time he's really seen the extent of the north.
It's the very beginning of the piece, and and Robert's coming up with his whole entourage, but there is certain tension.
My queen.
Take me to your crypt. I want to pay my respects.
We've been riding for a month, my love. Surely the dead can wait.
Ned.
We're dealing with such a complex world, so musically and instrumentation-wise, there was really a wide range that I could pull from. So we have everything in this show, from old instruments, Western instrument, violin, cello, but then also a lot of modern instruments, like a lot of synthesizers and just sounds that are manipulated, so to create really a wide range of sound.
What we've tried to do is be as eclectic in our sources and our choices of references for everything, whether it's costumes, props, set, locations we've chosen.
All the worlds that I adore, I've managed to kind of go into and pluck out bits that I think have become appropriate for all our different worlds that we're trying to create.
We went a lot of Far Eastern, bit of Moroccan, African, traditional medieval, but not trying to go for that ye olde English look. But if you mix it up enough and don't use too much of one culture, then it works.
Gemma was very clear that she wanted to give every world its own distinct feel. So when you're at Castle Black, you know you're at Castle Black. You're not going to confuse it for Pentos, and you're not going to confuse it for Winterfell.
The Winterfell of any of them is probably the closest to a kind of traditional Northern European world, with kind of thick, strong castle walls and big stone. And I just really looked at the kind of northern castles, etc., of Europe.
The north is a little bit Scandinavian, but really that's the closest you get to grungy, old-fashioned medieval, because it's dour and dark and nasty.
The architecture of the north is much rougher, it's much more decayed, it's cold, the weather's got to it, so everything's going to get eaten away. So we bought over 30 truckload of salvage timber, most of them over 200 years old. That worked really well for the north, because it's been eaten away, rotted away.
We used a lot of smoke at Winterfell to make it feel like people were working there, to make it alive and just to create another dimension to it. Smoke brings it to life, just makes it look like people are there. People are doing things, people are burning things.
The north basically have to clothe themselves with products they can get within a 50-mile radius. There's not much trading, so they tend to wear greys and blues, quite murky colours. It's very leather-based, very practical, lots of fur.
It's a direwolf.
There are no direwolves south of the wall.
No, there are 5.
The direwolf's not been seen for many years around Winterfell, and so it's kind of an omen, a dead direwolf that's just littered the birth of pups. And, it's a massive creature. The direwolf is our banner, our sign.
There are 5 pups. 1 for each of the Stark children. We were meant to have them.
It's obvious to John at that point what this means. That the direwolf is the sigil of the Stark house, that there's 5 of them, that there's 5 Stark children. This is clearly a sign.
These are all Inuit dogs, which is a breed that was developed basically to have a dog that looks like a wolf. The dogs are supposed to rip people's throat out and eviscerate people. We teach them to do things that will make them look like they're attacking. The actors are like a prop. So, and I could take one of these dogs and I could take you and we could do a go with or have them walk with you like they're your pet in about 5 minutes. By using food and little tricks that we do, they'll actually get used to it. We don't really want them to have a huge relationship with the actors because that gives them an excuse to goof off, and they will take advantage of it. It's a big challenge. There's a lot of attacks, plus they have to work with little kids, which that's always a scary combination. We want the dogs to look as fierce and mean as possible, but then they have to be with a 6-year-old child. And then otherwise we have ravens. And they're actually as trainable as a dog. They are so inquisitive and so interested in food and stuff, they're like a child, and they'll find a way to get in trouble very, very quickly. And inevitably, it's a problem. You know, somebody's got a sandwich, and the bird ends up landing on them trying to get the sandwich. So we have to tell people, sorry, you can't have food on set while the ravens are working. There are some scenes where they're supposed to look like they're soaring in the sky, and we're going to use a wind machine with a blue screen to make them look like they're actually soaring.
Lord Commander, a raven.
Castle Black is the furthest north that we go at the moment, and sits at the bottom of the ice wall. And it's supposed to be grim. You get the feeling the whole thing's gone to rack and ruin.
Castle Black is historically supposed to be a place that was quite grand, and it's sort of faded and fallen into disrepair. It's filthy, it's freezing cold. The mess hall is foul, very, very brutal, very sparse.
I did some research on people who lived way up in the Antarctica. Some of it was sort of Eskimos and things where they live on whale blubber and they're all pale and everything is white. And so all the food is just very kind of basic, sort of colourless stews. The intention was to build it as somewhere where they could work and not be constantly worrying about CGI and green screen and all the rest of it. And I think we've been relatively successful on that.
At the base of the wall, we've got Castle Black, which is an incredibly bleak castle that you'd think no one would want to inhabit. And our art department have built a fantastic set here, up to a certain height, and a certain amount of it contains all the action that we are concerned about for episodes 1 to 10. But we want to establish something a bit grander than that, so we have to put on towers which top that up on what we've built here. So it's our job to take on the wider shots here and add those bits and pieces.
The top of the wall set we're building on stage. That's achieved by building it on a rostrum about 10 foot above the ground. And then we create plywood formers to give us the shape of the ice. Then our plasters go on top of that with plaster, resin, and lots of sea salt to give it some sparkle. And our painters come in, give it some more colour, some more texture. And then we erect a green screen around 180 degrees of it. And then we get some wind effects, some snow effects.
I wanted to be here when you saw it for the first time.
The actual wall theme, or the Night's Watchman theme, we have strings, we have very low bells. So there's something intimidating about that one, but also something that later on can turn into something majestic and honorable. For when Snow and the others take their vows.
And bear witness to my vow. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death.
You walk into Castle Black and there it is, and there's the wall, and there's the lift for the wall, and there's all the things you've read about. And it's very easy to get immersed in that world with such incredible sets and detail put in.
One of the biggest challenges, I think, in The Night's Watch was to be able to tell you something about the different backgrounds of these people by the costume that they had on, and the costume had to be black.
It's not a uniform because they're not funded enough to do that anymore. The higher people will bring clothes with them that are probably more suitable. The others actually often arrive in a thin jacket. So that's all they have, and you actually visibly see them freezing, and then obviously as they qualify, they start gaining more clothes.
Well, Lord Snow, it appears you're the least useless person here.
We work with a wonderful fight director called Buster, and we didn't have much time to learn the fights, but Buster was brilliant, and you can pretend that you're a hard warrior.
I was pretty fortunate with these guys. They're all pretty athletic. They all seem to grasp it pretty well.
These fights, it's more like a dance. You're learning a dance. And I remember a few times we're all ready to go. just about to shout out action, and I'm thinking in my head, oh my, I can't remember the third move, you know, and I know that third move, there's something coming towards me.
You have to train people very differently. You know, like with the Ned and Jamie, we used a little bit of the knights of old with the hack and slash, versus we used a lot of Japanese katana style for Jamie's fight, just the way he held his sword and the way he twirled it.
Both are different styles. I have a much more direct style, whereas Jamie is much more kind of, eloquent and affected in his style of fighting.
You never want to do a flick for a flick's sake. You won't stand next to someone and all of a sudden just throw a back somersault for the sake of throwing a back somersault. You know, so you try and find cool stuff that you can kind of believe that they needed to do.
We want to make this real. We want to show the brutality of fighting and what really happens when you get stabbed. And for example, in the Hill Tribe fight, we decided we wanted to make this really gory, so we're going to bash one of the Hill Tribesmen's faces in, and we wanted to actually show the bashing of the face in. So we started the action with a stunt man with a hit, shot Peter pounding down on a face, and also now we're shooting Peter pounding down on a prosthetic face. So you'll see it being beaten and blood popping out of it, and it's going to be pretty horrible.
Jesus. Come in. We're approaching visual effects in a very specific way. We want visual effects to be as real as possible. Yes, there are fantasy elements, but what we're trying to do is to make the fantastical as real as possible.
A lot of what we do is just adding little bits and pieces to shots that hopefully nobody would even realise. We've got some big crowd scenes happening at the Sept of Baelor when they do the Ned's beheading. We've got out at Essos when we've got the whole camp. There's going to be a big crowd scene. And they did it, at the tournament we were doing that.
The tournament set we built on location in Shane's Castle. That is all built with materials sourced at Shane's Castle. We picked the trees in the wood. They were felled for our job and brought over about a quarter-mile trip to the tournament ground. And then when we take it down, we'll cut up that timber on site, and that'll be given to people in that area, really.
I've been sitting here for days! Start the damn joust before I piss myself.
What they do with animals is amazing. We rehearse everything very carefully before we get on set to make sure everyone's going to be safe.
I have actors' horses that I use. They're all trained for the actors, so they do the job for them. So the horse goes from A to B, and it's very quiet. It goes on set. It doesn't notice anything. Then I have my stunt horses, which are different, which they're a bit more faster. And then one of them is trained to fall over.
Everyone was absolutely gobsmacked. I didn't know if it was actually supposed to happen at the beginning because they didn't tell any of us. I was like, oh my God, is someone hurt?
Now the fence is all made out of, it's like kind of made of a type of foam. So as soon as it lands on the fence collapses, so the horse has no harm at all, there's nothing to it. And the horse is already trained to fall. And as soon as it's on the floor, it knows that its job's done. That horse, all it does is fall over. That's all it's trained for. They're very clever, they get used to it. They know what rolling is, they know what turnover is, and they know what action is. And they go straight away, they go on action. Action!
I think Brentley was very excited about seeing Sir Loris Tyrrell in his armour for the first time. Wonderful, I mean, gleaming armour.
The first time I saw even the costume, it blew me away. It's just so beautiful, it's a work of art.
It's quite interesting to tie together the structure and the mechanics that you need for the armour to actually articulate and move with this very organic kind of flowing forms that Michelle was looking for.
The armour's great, it looks brilliant. It's kind of tough to wear though. It definitely hurts the shoulders quite a bit because it's not even that heavy, it's just, it constricts you.
It takes a while to get this on. I mean, to imagine that people would actually fight in it is beyond me, but it looks fantastic.
The guys from King's Landing and the South have this kind of elegant, sleek, tailored look to them.
As you go south, obviously, they're near the sea, they can trade, they have silks, they have colours. It's much more sort of Mediterranean feel. There's more jewellery.
It's beautiful. Like the one your mother wears.
The whole thing about King's Landing is supposed to be quite lush. You've been up in the frozen north and everything, and down on King's Landing, people are supposed to be growing things. King Robert refers to them all being half naked and deliciously sweaty and gorgeous.
You feel that you've come to this really hot, sexy place, and there's a light coming through the windows, a lot of greenery and plants on the balconies growing through.
Malta becomes the backdrop of King's Landing again. We'll take the basis of what's there, take away what we don't like, and add bits and features that we do like.
For our ability to create a world that you couldn't quite pinpoint, Malta was a fantastic location. It's been settled successively by so many different people, so there's so many different traditions.
Anything Mediterranean, North African, Southern European
we can kind of more or less find here, and we can dress it to cover any period.
Malta is so exotic and mysterious and ancient. I think it really lends itself to the stories and gives it a lot of flavor.
Anytime you see this Red Keep castle that's at the end of King's Landing, it's completely CG, nothing exists. And that's going into a lot of locations that we're doing here.
We wanted to try and make the castle itself, the Red Keep, have a sort of indoor-outdoor feeling. So many of the rooms have got balconies and lots of lovely things growing and beautiful perfumes and flowers, so that all the time they're outside, they're inside.
We have 2 large sets for King's Landing. There's a composite set for all the personal quarters in the Red Keep. And then we have the throne room.
The throne room is magnificent. It's huge. It's got this Pantheon floor. It's got these great big pillars. I wanted to try and make that feel incredibly sort of cathedral-esque.
It's very lavish, very ornate. As you come in, you go through some massive bronze doors. So as you open that, you reveal this beautiful throne room with marble floors throughout. And then all along one side, you've got some terrific stained glass windows that pour light in across the marble floor. And then you walk up to the throne itself, which is sitting on a bronze dais. And then behind that, there's a beautiful stained glass window, so you get all that light pouring in over the king.
The centermost prop in Westeros is the Iron Throne, so we wanted to get it right.
Obviously, we'd made a model of it in the art department. We had a lovely prop maker here called Gavin who made it.
It's quite a frightening piece. It is literally blackened swords bent into a throne, and it's melted and pitted and hammered and uncomfortable, which is what it's supposed to be.
The first time I walked through the throne room, I was really intimidated. It's the size of a football field. I didn't know how we were going to light it. I didn't know how we were going to fill it with people. I didn't know how I was going to move them through the space. Thankfully, we figured it out.
The throne room's pretty amazing. When you go into a set that they've built, and just the sheer size of that is just makes you feel like you're in this sort of mystical story.
Each of these worlds is a real kind of pleasure to do. And then the other one is the Eyrie.
I was dumbstruck when I first saw the Eyrie. It was breathtaking.
It's, 3/4 way up an enormous mountain, and you get to it by a stone staircase that's carved, and there are wayforts along the way. So it's the ultimate refuge.
The Eyrie, the look of that had to be quite quirky, have an uncomfortable feel about it, and a slightly sort of unhinged atmosphere. So a lot of faded tapestries and the weirwood throne, which are the biggest piece for us, which is actually made out of real wood.
It's actually 3 different pieces of wood all welded together. And it's incredibly heavy. I mean, you have to get a crane to get it in and out of here. And I like the twisty shapes of it. We seem to go with this high height and everything, so...
Jem was keen that we get a verticality into it. We have a staircase that's cantilevered out and rises around the space with the moon door at its centre, this kind of execution spot that the Eyrie has.
It's a scary environment, the height of the castle. There's a cell with no fourth wall, and the fourth wall leads out into an abyss, a bottomless pit.
And then, just to add to it, in the cells, the floor tilts just a little. So you go to sleep. Going to sleep would be terrifying, because if you move in your sleep and you kind of roll, you would naturally roll in the direction of the slope, and, you would wake up a foot from the edge.
Obviously, it's supposed to be a sort of, 1,000-foot drop beneath it, so we had a lot of wind there. And we also had falling water coming through that set, running down the middle. It's supposed to look sort of wet and horrible.
You just get such a feeling of this being her kingdom. The whole throne with the gnarly wood and the greys, and it just, all the kind of dusty feeling. The sets are amazing on this.
It's just more than I ever would have anticipated or expected. I mean, look where we are. It's incredible.
We've been very lucky in our locations. We've been able to come to Malta and film in a wide range of spaces. St. Anton's Palace, for example, it's the President's Palace.
Malta was also chosen because it had a fantastic coastline. A lot of our story has to do with the continent separated by a narrow sea.
It won't be long now. Soon you will cross the narrow sea and take back your father's throne.
When will they be married?
Soon. The Dothraki never stay still for long.
Dothraki are a bit of a cross between the Mongols and some of the Native American tribes. They're horse people. They live in these great, vast grass plains, and they make a living by conquering other people, much like Genghis Khan and the Mongol horde.
Khal Drogo is one of the most brutal and effective
like warriors in a world where violence translates directly to power.
The music for Drogo and the Dothrakis is completely different than any of the other music. It's very tribal, and we have a lot of ethnic instruments there. It's more played on these war horns, I guess I would call it. And that's almost like a call, like a war call.
They're barbarians. They're living. They're nomadic. Although they have a city, they're on the move most of the time. So we looked at lots of different tribes and people that travel a lot, grass huts, mud huts, that sort of thing, and then mixed all of it up.
So far we've got rounded tents, which are more sort of igloo shaped, with skins and cloths and all sorts of things. Then they get into these earthen tents. So we've kind of created another kind of structure, which is really nice.
The Temple of the Dosh Caleen, that's been built on stage here in Belfast.
The whole structure is made from willow, which we've harvested from a locally grown field. It's a very flexible, very bendy type of wood.
Drogo kicked my pussy!
We actually thought it would be much more believable if we heard them speaking their own language rather than have them speak in heavily accented English. David Peterson, a linguistics professor at Berkeley, essentially invented the Dothraki language.
When you're creating a language that's supposed to look like a natural language, first you must start with the culture. There are actually in Dothraki more words for kill than for love.
When they first told me that, I was like, cool, I'll totally do it. And I got it, and I was pretty scared, but it was a great challenge.
It's really worth trying to do it right because it sounds right, you know, and if you do gabba huja daba gabba, it always sounds really crap, so it is worth trying to master it.
It's an incredible language getting your mouth around the word, like they're so expressive.
We're building this fantastic funeral pyre in Matalib, which is on the west coast of the island. And this is where we see one of our main characters, his burial. Very kind of sophisticated in the fact that the whole framework is welded and made from special effects.
We had 2 stunt women on fire. So it's a complex sequence, but it went really well.
You're under the impression that she's going to kill herself and give everything up. So musically, it's powerful, it's tribal, it's emotional. But then on the following day, we realize she's still alive, and then it unfolds that the dragons are hatching, and she becomes this very powerful person. So at that moment, we're playing something musically that we actually have never heard before, and so we are playing out her theme in its full glory.
Just the best story. You follow it and you get excited by it, and when you think you've got it figured, it completely changes its mind.
It's encompassing, actually. Without the costumes, it could be contemporary life. It's about people caring, fighting, loving, hating.
You think you know them, you think you've got them pegged as what they seemingly are, but they really aren't.
It's been very, satisfying, very exhilarating for me to play a part that is got that much depth, and and I've been able to explore it to that extent.
To have the freedom to combine traditions and to combine the fantasy elements was a great challenge, and it gave me a whole new respect for the genre.
There's something about the depth of the world that George has built such an amazing foundation for that tends to pull both fantasy and non-fantasy fans alike into.
And just the idea of taking this story, which George Martin created, and actually knowing from the beginning, from now, the essential shape of the entire series. It's incredible luxury for us as screenwriters.
All of the things that I was trying to do in it, they got, and they liked, and they wanted to preserve in it, So this is David and Dan's baby. They're the showrunners, and they're making the ultimate decisions here, but it's still recognizably my baby too.
Starks are all right eventually. Winter is coming.